Hello, hello. I am Zhara Astra, a writer, producer, professor, and I am on Breaking the Biz podcast.
Stay tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Greetings from Breaking the Biz, brought to you by Yes I Can Unity Through Music and Education. I'm William Felber, your navigator through the intriguing universe of the entertainment industry, as revealed by the visionaries and creators who bring it to life. Stay tuned as we delve into diverse insights from the forefront of entertainment, hearing from pioneers, creators, and agents of change. Prepare for a journey filled with tales of innovation, resilience, and the undying quest for artistic brilliance.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We have a wonderful guest speaker. We have Zhara Astra, who is the president of Auracle Productions, an autism advocate, author, professor. She does it all. Like I mentioned, she's a female-owned and operated production company that celebrates the beauty of women worldwide. The company writes, develops, and produces television, film, and media content that highlights female-driven stories and book adaptations with authentic female characters. Zhara is also an innovator in the field of autism after becoming an autism advocate, international public speaker, author, as well as the world's first professor of female neurodivergent studies, after developing the first course of its kind at Arizona State University. In her work around the subject, she propels the initiative for more research and understanding of the female autism phenotype, which she believes the lack thereof and lack of its own subtype has failed girls and women across the globe for far too long. Her work challenges the current healthcare system and diagnostic criteria in place for neurodivergent people of all genders, races, and socioeconomic backgrounds. She recently partnered with Stone Village Television to produce a co-host two documentary films entitled Understanding Autism and ADHD, Wired Differently, which are slated for release this spring. So Zhara, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, you are a very busy woman doing a little bit of everything. So I'm honored to have you.
Thank you for having me. I think I need a nap after that introduction. That was exhausting.
It's all good. I do it daily. So I want to talk. Tell me kind of your story, so to speak. Where did you find that passion for autism and becoming an advocate?
Well, my introduction to autism was as a child, I helped to babysit and take care of my little cousin who was a non-speaking autistic boy. And that's what I thought autism was. So to my surprise, 30 years later, my son, who was then 5 at the time, gets an autism diagnosis. And I saw a lot of similarities between himself and me. Same, but different, which led someone to telling me that they thought I was probably autistic, in which I said, F you, you don't know me. Back then, I think there was just a lot of stigma and stereotype, which there still is around autism. And I thought, there's no way that I'm on the spectrum, so I just went down the rabbit hole. I started doing a ton of research. I started reading every book written by an autistic female that I could get my hands on. And I dove into any research that I could find from any doctor on it and came to the conclusion that I was also autistic. But that wasn't enough. I had to get a brain scan to verify. And then I didn't believe that either. So I had to get an actual diagnosis. And then I still didn't believe it. There's a lot of up and down and imposter syndrome that comes with being late diagnosed autistic. But that's kind of what led me into getting my own diagnosis and the work I was doing. Because I think at that point, I just got pissed off. How am I in my 30s and I'm not diagnosed and given the same, diagnosis and treatment and attention that my, young white male son got, right? Why am I left out of the equation and how many other girls and women are? Which led to the work that I'm doing now.
I love it. And you bring up a lot of points. You talk about imposter syndrome, masking, right? A lot of females have to mask, and so do guys. But I do hear from a lot of females on the spectrum. It's extremely hard to kind of find your place and so much kind of to fit in. But you're right. Like, obviously diagnoses are a lot more common now. There's a lot of resources and supports and therapy and all these different things that are available. Most importantly, when you're young in high school, all those services are free. But then when you're out of high school, the IEP is done and those supports go out the window. And then you have to kind of fight with the college, if that's the route you go, for accommodations, or even after college, accommodations for the work setting, whatever it is to make you feel comfortable and allow you to thrive. So I want to backtrack a little. When you were a young girl, what was the dream job for you?
I was going to be an actress, a writer, and a lawyer.
I love it. Okay. Is the writer, actress. Okay. I'm following.
Yeah.
So as you kind of go through school, did those directions or passions change as as you're going through high school? After high school, what was your route?
Well, I'd say that I stayed consistent to those things because number one, I'm not a lawyer, but I am a defender of justice. I've represented myself in court multiple times, and the work that I'm doing around autism, it's fighting for what's right and what's necessary. The acting part of it, I did end up acting for a while, which I think is just a nod to the female autistic experience because we're used to masking and camouflaging. So with that, I can kind of blend in and play any character that's needed, you know. And then with the writing, I was a published child poet, and then I used to write stories that I would send to like President Clinton or whoever was in office at the time, because I thought I would get published for some reason, but through them, and then became a screenwriter. But whenever I got out of high school, I ended up going to Texas A&M, and I got a double degree in English literature and philosophy. So writing and thinking. And then I end up in LA. I got a master's degree in screenwriting and just continued in that path of writing and creating and filmmaking while doing the whole justice bit on the side.
I love it. The reason why I asked that question is sometimes people, have this vision of what they're going to do when they grow up, and then they go in a different direction. But all of those things that they're quite ambitious about and passionate about kind of play into what they do later on in life. And just as you mentioned, you're kind of doing all three. I want to talk about after college. Did you take on an internship? Did college help you? A lot of times people go, "Oh, you got this degree. What are you going to do with it?" In your case, obviously writing and then going into screenwriting and getting your master's, you did do that. But before you got your master's, what was the jobs? What did you do to pay the bills?
Oh God, can I say that on camera? No,
You can.
I, how free of a space. As you can imagine, having a degree in philosophy and English literature does not create the most job opportunities. I moved to California from Texas, and I ended up working in the cannabis industry. So I did a lot of work in activism in there, nodding back to the whole justice element of it. God, I've had so many. I'm also dual diagnosed ADHD. So you can imagine I'm a Jane of all trades. I can do anything. I wear a lot of hats. I've had a lot of very interesting, bizarre jobs. I bartended for a long time. Like I said, I was acting. I did a lot of commercial work for a while. Um, and then writing. So there was a period of time after college when I would write. I was an academic writer, which essentially means that college and high school students hire me to write papers for them.
So you were the Chat GBT before Chat GBT.
That's right, ZGBT.
I love it. Okay, fair enough. So you're writing papers, you're doing whatever you need to do to, to get by.
Hustling, yes.
And that's a true thing. Everyone needs to hustle in order to do what they need to do. Talk me through screenwriting. Did you start writing scripts and such for movies, TV, film, before you then created a production company?
I wrote my first screenplay at, I want to say I was 8 or 9 years old, and I wrote the sequel to Beavis and Butthead Do America. It was Beavis and Butthead Do China, and that was my big story. And then, so I think I was just kind of like destined in a way to end up in this field. I acted for a while, and I didn't love it because I felt like the writing was poor. And I felt like it was all through the male gaze. So I would be like, this isn't what a female wouldn't say this. We don't do that. We don't talk that way. These aren't our mannerisms. And so there was a lot of clash there, I'd say, with me in that department as an actor. So that led me to just starting to write on my own. And I had a writing partner at the time. And so I just kind of started down that route. And then I got married. And I got pregnant and I had a kid and I started to feel my dreams slipping away. And now I'm taking care of this child. And then I had another child. And at that point, I have a 2-year-old and I have a newborn baby. And I had this, coming to Jesus moment with myself where I said, what the fuck are you doing? You have not been planning and working and building your entire life up to this point to be this creative and to make movies and make television and to have a voice in this field. You haven't been doing this just for it to slip away. Motherhood is a beautiful role. It is not your only role. So that's whenever I went, years later, that's whenever I went back to grad school while I have a newborn and a 2-year-old. And I powered through grad school and just kind of took off from there. And then I went and I worked in development at this company for several years and was just writing, and here we are.
I want to talk. You bring up some good points, right? Obviously, when you're creative and you can't get that outlet, you need to have that outlet. Creative people, especially, I can imagine ADHD being able to go from projects to projects and such. You talked about going and working at a company, a development company. Talk me through that. Was that that's right after grad school, correct?
Right after grad school, yes. So I started working with Stone Village Television, and they're who I just made the 2 documentaries with. So the first project that I was ever pitched was a documentary on autism, and I didn't have my diagnosis at the time. And I thought, okay, cool, I'll work on this. Pandemic hit. It took years. So by the time it finally came full circle and they were like, we're ready to make this, I now had a diagnosis. I was now a professor of autism at ASU. I was a public speaker, international, author, doing all that. So it was just kind of a really interesting full circle moment.
So let me get this straight. Somebody came and pitched that idea that they were going to do a documentary on autism at the time, undiagnosed. As you're kind of exploring and learning, are you kind of seeing some things and you're like, that kind of describes me? Or what was that moment like?
Well, we hadn't even started. It was, hey, I want to do this film. Cool. Pandemic hits, there's no research, nothing was put into it. It was just like, we're going to put a pin in this. And the pin just happened to be taken out a few years down the road when I'm doing the work that I'm doing. And now I was like, this is interesting. I'm no longer going to be your production assistant. I'm going to be your co-host. So.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, you live it. Obviously, you can most definitely advise and work on that. So
Yeah.
talk me through, I know these things are being released in spring. Is the focus predominantly on the female being on the spectrum?
No. In my idealistic brain, I want a whole docu-series done specifically on females because there's just so much we can talk about. But the film Understanding Autism, it's on PBS right now. And I think it's more of a fully, full encompassing view of the entirety of the spectrum. So our non-speaking we have our non-speaking autistic people on there who are using devices. And then we have like the higher functioning, for lack of a better term, autistic people, more Asperger's end. We have families, we have the top neuropsychologists and doctors and therapists and scientists in the world that are doing this work. But it is more of like the full spectrum of it. With a special section for women, yes.
I love it. I mean, I know, that is something that you're quite passionate about, and there is not so much. I mean, I can go back and, people go, not everyone is Rain Man. I've been working in the autism field for quite a while. And when I used to bring up autism, that's what everyone had, that stereotype. But obviously, we know that there's a spectrum, just like you mentioned, of the ability to struggle with speech to the high end, like you were talking about, Asperger's. I've seen the evolution as it's kind of changed, so to speak. But you mentioned kind of like when you were first diagnosed, or you didn't believe it, and it had this kind of negative stereotype. But what we're trying to do within our program is to highlight the abilities out of that disability. There are many gifts that come with individuals on the spectrum, and that's what we try to be, the catalyst, and lift those individuals up and give them an opportunity to be successful and find exactly what it is they are passionate about. So my next question to you is, what gifts do you see, now that you have learned so much about autism? You've obviously lived autism, but what gifts do you think that you bring to the table? I mean, you definitely mentioned something that caught my ear with girls don't say these things, girls don't have these mannerisms. Obviously, a lot of writers are male oriented and probably don't get the female. So that was one thing that stood out to me. But what gifts and abilities do you bring to the table that you have now kind of learned through self-awareness?
Okay, this is a two-parter. One of the things I discovered is that not everyone plays movies in their minds, and I thought that every person on the planet did that. For me, I constantly have movies playing. So as a screenwriter and working in development, I can read a script, I can read a scene, and I play the entire movie, the entire scene. I play the entire thing from start to finish out in my brain. I see the whole movie. Therefore, I can see what doesn't work. I can see what dialogue doesn't work because I'm watching it play out in my head as I'm reading it. So I think I have the ability to write in a really authentic voice where it's not forced. It's just natural, fluid language. This is how people talk and act. That's helped me tremendously. And then having a unique sense of creativity and just a way that I view the world through my eyes. I think I have a pretty interesting sense of humor that really seems to work in the stuff that I write. So, I mean, I think those things help tremendously. And that's part one. Part two is, in the work that I do, I am trying to change the way that autistic women are labeled and viewed in film and television. Because as you said, the Rain Man effect happened in the 80s. And that was the depiction that most people, especially in America, were given. This is what autism is. Even to this day, you have Good Doctor, you have all of these shows that have a young white male savant who's really good at math, or he's a medical genius or something like that. Even though we know only 1% of the population are actually autistic savants, that's the entirety of what we see on film and television. Except for the fact that autistic women are everywhere in film and television. We just aren't labeled. Because once you label someone, once you label the Good Doctor and you say, this is what autism is like, you're under extreme amount of scrutiny from the public and the press and from autistic people. Well, we don't do that. We don't do that. So with autistic females, they don't put the label on us. But the manic pixie dream girl, eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, right? You have the girl and she's got colored hair and she's out there, and her entire role is to help our main protagonist figure out like this quirky little, side quest joy in life before he moves on. That is an autistic female. They just don't label us. So part of what I'm doing is helping to like let's label these people. Wednesday Addams, autistic. There's so many characters where I'm like, if only they would just put the label on it, I think it would help a lot of us to better understand autism and help those of us at home who are like that to see representation, in these shows.
No, I think obviously I'm laughing, thinking of like SpongeBob, the creator was like, SpongeBob is autistic, and like people are like, oh, that, makes sense. I watch Big Bang Theory and I think about like, that's my high school classroom with students. Like, it's almost like I'm in that classroom and then I watch that show and I'm like, this is what I deal with daily. So labeling, I think, is important. Obviously, people don't like labels, but at the same time, when there are positive characters and people can relate, I think it is important to label and kind of highlight those type of individuals. So that's interesting that you mentioned that.
Well, my mom, when I went through the diagnosis process, and a lot of her generation, they say, I don't understand why you need this label. Here's why they're important. Not only does it give us a better sense of who we are and an acceptance of who we are, but when I start to look at the dangers that come along with being undiagnosed, when I look at the dangers of being an autistic girl who's, what are they saying now, 3 to 4 times more likely to try to commit suicide, 16 times now more likely to be sexually abused. If we had those labels early on and we understood what we were dealing with, maybe we could protect these girls a little more, right?
No, that's a fantastic point. And, we talk about 21st century skills that you need to be successful in any career. And self-awareness is one of those major ones. Like, you need to know how you tick, why you think the way you think. And those statistics you just shared are very serious statistics. So yeah, you need to kind of know yourself and be able to protect yourself. So interesting stuff. I want to ask you, networking. A lot of our individuals who are trying to find their way in the entertainment industry always talk about how difficult it is to network. The face-to-face, the just kind of going into a room. Obviously, when we think about networking, it's, passing out the business card, cocktail hour, what have you. Did you have any issues? Obviously you're very outgoing, but did you have issues with networking? And second part to that question, how successful has networking been to your success?
I actually don't know that I'm outgoing as I seem. I think I'm an introvert extrovert, which means I'm an introvert and I'm completely content being in my little bubble or hanging out with the dog at a party, right? Unless I have my ADHD bestie with me, because I swear, as an autistic girl, when we have that balance, when we have the outgoing extroverted ADHD friend, they force us to network and to talk to people and to meet people. And so for me, having that sidekick is just so beneficial to any kind of social situation, right? So I would advise that to an autistic person: get your extroverted friend with you to go to these events, because they'll be the ones, talking like, oh, this guy's a director. Hey, you got to meet my friend Zhara over here. She does this. Rather than being the lone wolf out there, which can be really intimidating. I'm not going to get very far if I'm just by myself at these events. I'm going to try to find an excuse to leave.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we obviously do like a 16 personalities assessment when we're talking about self-awareness, and obviously there's introverts, extroverts. I hate to stereotype what's the introvert, what's the extrovert, because we obviously know things definitely cross and you can be a little bit of both, but there is some truth to having someone who can kind of guide you and be that energy, keep you focused, help you open up that conversation. So there's people who make friends from other people's friends,
Yeah.
and so that makes absolute sense. Talk me through collaboration. Obviously, creating documentaries and working in that field, you have to be able to collaborate. And how has that been for you?
Collaboration is a skill that did not come natural to me. It is something that I had to learn and really work at. As an autistic female, oftentimes we're very controlling of the way that we play when we're kids, the way that we work, the stuff that we're creating. Even as a screenwriter, I made something and it's perfect and this is it. And it took me a really long time to unlearn those things and to open up to the concept of collaboration, which now I love because I can look at it as here is my lane. I'm going to write a script. And that is step one. And I'm going to send that script out into the world. And then, now the producers are going to take it. And now we go to step two, and everyone's going to make it better. So for me, a lot of it has to do with just changing the way that I view my work and not being so precious about it and seeing everything as it's all a group project, especially in film. You're not going to do anything on your own. Nothing you make is perfect. And if you ever want to have a career, then you have to be able to collaborate, to work with other people, and to do it graciously.
Okay. Talk me through the creation of your production company. When did that come into play?
This is an idea that I've had for years and years. Obviously, the film industry is a very male-dominated industry. It's not always a safe space for females, especially, again, females that are on the spectrum. And so for me, I just wanted to create a space for women by women where we could just have our little zone and work on the projects that we want to work on and just have our own little network of women. And so I started this, I think it's been maybe 2 years now. It's a newer creation, maybe a year and a half or something, not too terribly long.
And is your staff predominantly female?
100%.
Love that. Okay. Okay, perfect. I mean, you want what you're giving a platform in a community. Did you have any special interest? Obviously, most individuals, and I say most, I find on the spectrum have certain things that they're just kind of infatuated with, or we mentioned gifts, but like dinosaurs or trains. Was there something when you were young that you kind of not perseverated on, but was definitely considered like a special interest?
Trolls. Trolls. I loved trolls, collecting them, the little ones, the big ones, the jewels. I loved trolls. And then as I got into adolescence, it's common for males to be very object oriented with their special interests, while girls often to be focused more on a person, a celebrity. So as I got into my adolescent years, it went from trolls to Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore became my special interest. So,
Okay. Amen. Talk me through maintaining the work-life balance. Obviously, how do you balance creativity? I mean, obviously, you're great at balancing. You were able to get through a grad program while having two young kids. But how do you find that balance? How do you shut off the creative mind to then go into family mode and then vice versa?
I wish I had a good answer for this. I don't sleep a lot. Ever since I was a child, I have sleep deprivation. I can't turn my brain off. So for me, there's always something going on. It's challenging for me to bounce from one thing to the other. So I just try to take time specifically for this portion of the day. This is what I'm going to do. Now my kids are getting home from school. Now I'm going to dedicate this time for them. Calendars and schedules are my best friend. Timers on my phone. If I didn't have a calendar on my phone, if I couldn't make lists of what to do, oh my gosh, I would be lost. But those two little tools in modern technology have changed my life.
Okay. I love it. Tell me a time where you were able to step out of your comfort zone and for professional growth.
Ooh, I'd say I mean, we're going to go back to the whole collaboration. I think the first time I had a script that I was working on where it was optioned, right? And there are producers and a whole team of people attached to it. Um, because again, I had to step out of my little bubble of control and of this is how I view this to be. And I really had to just drop my ego and listen to a lot of ideas that, I was apprehensive and kind of combative with at first. So breaking through that barrier, I think, was really, really challenging for me. But at the end of that, able to create something that is so beautiful that I can't talk about, but you guys are going to be able to watch it soon enough. So, but that wouldn't have happened had I not broken through, the work that I was doing and kind of my view on that.
Okay. What advice would you give to an individual who wants to break into screenwriting and producing and creating their own projects?
I would say you want to be a screenwriter, you want to be a producer, you have to work your ass off. You have to challenge yourself to stay motivated and engaged with the work you're doing and keep doing it. Don't be so hard on yourself because a lot of us, especially like autistic people, we're very hard on ourselves, right? I wrote 20 scripts before anyone ever gave a shit, so you have to work through a lot of stuff, and just keep going and keep doing it and keep talking to people. And the more you write, the better you get. The more energy and time you put into whatever your craft is, the better that you're going to get at it.
Okay. I could not agree more on that. Obviously, you've shifted through different roles. Let's talk about the professor and creating a curriculum. Obviously, you live it, right? And that's what probably was, the thing that got you going, the fulcrum for writing a curriculum. How long did it take to write a curriculum? And you mentioned it's the first of its kind at Arizona. Talk me through that.
Well, being a writer for a really long time, I wrote an article about my diagnosis for Scientific American magazine. It got published, and that garnered a lot of attention worldwide, where suddenly everyone's asking me about it and they want me to talk about it. And I spoke at Stanford, and I spoke in Brazil, and I'm being flown around to talk at all these events and things. And Arizona State University, I happened on a call. I happened with somebody that worked there, and they said, this is a really good idea. Because I said, hey, let's do a course on autism in film and women, right? That was my original idea. They said, let me get the dean on the phone. I talked to the dean. I said, hey, I have this idea. She said, let's do a meeting. We talked. We went from there. They flew me out to give a guest lecture. It ended up being a huge hit. There was all of the counseling psychology department there. And then they said, hey, this is really important. We want you to develop a course. So I don't even know how. I think that was in like October, and I was teaching the course by March or April. Yeah. So I couldn't even tell you how I did it. I just went through like, okay, what's important? For me, I'm a very linear thinker. So I'm like, let's start at the beginning of time, the history of women and brains and how we're treated, and let's go through this process of where we are. And I just developed it in that way. And then suddenly I'm teaching, and I'm like, how the heck is this happening? I don't know, but I'm going to roll with it. And my students really liked it. A lot of them were, as I say, like autism questioning, right? So they were like, well, maybe I'm on the spectrum. I'm not sure. Took the course. They really valued it because it was taught by a woman that was actually autistic. So
no, being authentic obviously is very important. What characters through media did you use as role models or individuals on the spectrum from a female aspect?
Well, when I started this course a few years ago, I mean, at that point, there still weren't a whole lot of women that were labeled as autistic. The ones that I found for just like from the 90s were just horrifying. I think there was one with like a Elizabeth Shue playing this autistic woman, and I was just like, oh my God, this is horrifying. There weren't a lot of really good examples back then, but as I mentioned, my favorite modern example is Wednesday Addams. because she has her special interest, which is horror, the same as my autistic son, his special interest. She's just hyper focused, doesn't like people in her own world, does her own thing, literally dances to the beat of her own drum. So I love using her as an example, even though she's not labeled as such. And then Kayla Cromer, she's on, I forget the name of the show. Maybe you guys could help me, but the show about the autistic brother and sister. And she's one of the only authentic representations that I had seen up until that point, because she's actually autistic as well.
That brings up a great point. How do you feel? There's obviously always people with disabilities and actors playing those individuals with disabilities, but we don't, you mentioned that authentic stuff. Why is there never individuals on the spectrum playing individuals on the spectrum? Like, obviously, the Good Doctor is not really on the spectrum, and it's just him kind of showing you autism, but it's not really all the time autism.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Hollywood, putting people in roles that really live those lives?
Well, the producer side of me says, I want an A-lister for this role because that's the only way that I'm going to get funding from this network, and that's the only way it's going to get made, right? If you don't have your Charlize Theron or whoever that's attached to this, it's probably not going to be made. Go enjoy making an indie, right? So the producer side of me understands that. And then the autistic side of me and the writer side of me, the heart of my creativity, says these roles should be going to actual autistic people. Because what is our job as an actor too? It's, or as a writer, it's to create authenticity and to give a glimpse of that on television, on the big screen. So why not give the most authentic glimpse that we could?
Okay, I love it. As far as speaking goes, where is a dream location or a dream conference school for you to speak at?
I would love to move my course to like Harvard, the top of the top, or Stanford. I would love to do that. I would love to teach in California. Yeah, a
Okay,
stage like that.
I love it. Is there a mantra that you have that kind of keeps you focused or positive, a mantra that you see yourself saying daily?
My dad told me this years ago, and it's so simple and silly, but I repeat this regularly because, again, autistic people, we get worked up and dysregulated and have meltdowns. And so I repeat this in my head, and it's everything always works out. If it didn't, you'd be dead. I'm like, Dad, you
Love
were
that.
right. I'm still here, it's still working out. I don't remember my problems from 5 years ago. Still going.
Sometimes our parents drop the most wisdom. Talk me through adaptability. Obviously, individuals on the spectrum usually like things their way, don't like change. How are you with being adaptable and pivoting?
I am extremely good at adapting and pivoting. Again, a lifetime of masking, a lifetime of having to do that, while also being told that I'm so, stubborn and dramatic and difficult. But I think at this point in my life, I am really good at adapting to whatever situation and whatever person I'm dealing with. I can work with it.
Okay, I love it. Um, one last question I have for you. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give to your younger self with all that you have experienced in life?
I would say don't get distracted by men and stay focused on your dreams and your goals, because gosh, you're gonna waste a lot of time.
Amen.
Sorry, but
You got to preach it.
that's
Amen.
it.
All right, I'm going to open it up to some questions out of the group here. I just need to see some hands and I will call on you. I see the first hand. Presley, go for it.
Hi Zara. First off, I was really originally going to ask you on what advice do you have for a person who has autism to write a screenplay? But I know you've already mentioned it a few minutes ago. But I don't have any questions as of now, but I just want to make a comment that, I am working on a screenplay, and as myself who is diagnosed with autism for 20 years now, since I was 3, I'm working my ass off 24/7. I've been working on my screenplay for a year now, and hopefully it'll be moving forward in the years to come.
Good. Just keep going and don't get disgruntled by, you know, how hard it is and by this industry. Because if you believe in yourself and keep that mentality that it's going to happen, you have a way better chance of it happening.
Yeah.
Amen. If you
Yeah.
can envision it and you've got that strong growth mindset, obviously things happen for you. So good point. Matthew Paul, I see your hand up. Go for it.
Hi, Zara. So I was wondering, what was the name of that magazine or website that you sent the article to, and what inspired you to write and send it?
Scientific American magazine. And what inspired me was not seeing all of the women like myself that were either misdiagnosed or undiagnosed from a young age. Because females were told most often we have a mood-based disorder, bipolar, she's PMS, she has anxiety disorder, instead of being told that, hey, you're probably autistic. So pure rage is what inspired me to write that.
Yeah, kind of relatable. Thanks.
Awesome. It's so true too, right? Like you get labeled and you think you've got these other issues, and it just, if you just had that diagnosis early on, it would make, more sense. And then you can explore it versus looking at bipolar and looking at all these different mood disorders and such. So great point. Danny, I see your hand up. Go for it.
Um, I I just wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on trans women wanting to get into the same space as you're in?
I'm
Like
I know exactly what you're asking. I'm so glad you're asking this. I'm actually very passionate about this, and the first thing I say in my class is that when I'm talking about the female autistic experience, I'm also talking about the trans female experience, because what we've seen from brain studies is that, first of all, transgender people are 3 to 6 times more likely to be autistic. A trans person,
oh,
I think, yeah. That's huge. Why aren't we talking about that? A trans person, 30% more likely to be on the spectrum. There are huge crossovers there with gender, sexuality, all of these things. And in brain studies, they showed that the brain scan was more congruent with the brain that the person identified with than the one that their biological brain. So a trans woman, when they did these brain studies, her brain looked more like a female brain, right? I think that's
hmm,
huge. That says a lot. I mean, there's kind of science backing it up there. So I'm very inclusive in that space of trans women as well, and non-binary. There's a lot of autistics that float in between.
okay. Thank you. I appreciate that actually.
Perfect. Thank you. Vincent, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah. Um, I heard you talking about Wednesday. Fun fact, it's actually funny you mentioned that because the director of that show, Tim Burton, actually he has autism.
I believe that there are a huge amount of directors in Hollywood that are autistic and oftentimes don't want to disclose it. One of the biggest in the world, we already all know who this is. He just made a movie, and the opening scene is him as a child lining up his cars. Come on. But they won't all come out and say it because of the stigma. And I think if they
Yeah.
did, it would be hugely beneficial.
Yeah, actually. Oh, and I really like that. What you're talking about. Every time, oh my goodness. Every t I always talk about me wanting to adapt to new roles.
Mhm.
Sometimes I tend to talk about, oh, I really want to play James Bond. I
Mhm.
really want to. What advice would you give to anyone who, because my mom always says, as well, she tends to react rather than reason.
Yeah. Well, I would say, I mean, this is a tricky one because there is a part of me as an autistic person that is brutally honest.
Mhm.
And like, what is everyone capable of playing a role like James Bond? No, they're not. You know what I mean? At some point, we have to be realistic with what we're capable of doing with who we are in the space that we're in. But that being said, there are creative ways around it. Okay, cool. Write something different. You know what I mean? Write a variation of that in your own way, if that makes sense at all. But like, I don't know. Are you going to play James Bond in the next huge franchise movie? Are any of us? No, we're not. You know? Like,
But what advice would you have to anyone who's inspired by that stuff and wants to be an actor?
I would say put in the work, go to acting classes, read the books. You know, to become a screenwriter, I read 29 books on the craft of screenwriting while getting my master's degree. Um, and I think that just putting in the work and the time and the energy is just getting me closer and closer. And same for you, whatever you want to do, whatever role you want to be an actor, put in the work, put in the hours, and just chip away at it. And there would, you know, create a space for yourself. Like why can't I think of the show with Kayla Cromer and the other guy? Because he's a male actor. He's a male.
Is it atypical?
No,
No.
it's oh shoot. I can't think of it, but the writer and the star in it is an autistic male. And he created this show for himself. So we are in a space creatively, especially with all these resources we have in YouTube and whatever else, where we are able to create whatever we want and put it out there, and things can get picked up. Broad City was on YouTube. And it Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I think, was on YouTube, right? Like they funded this themselves and then got it picked up from there. So I would say if you're not finding what you want, create that space, make it yourself, and try to get it picked up. Go the indie route because that's 100% possible.
There
Okay.
you go. Great advice. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your question, Vince. Isaac, I see your hand up.
Oh no. I was gonna say that I looked up and I thought the show you're talking about was atypical, but wait, who'd you say was in it?
Kayla Cromer, it's a
Caleb Crumb.
yeah, Cromer. I can never remember the name of it, but
While he's looking that up, what was the movie where they lined up the trains? Which was the director?
Spielberg.
Spielberg. Got it. I mean, honestly, like creativity, imagination, tapping into that stuff. Again, another example of just tapping into the abilities that come with that disability.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting. We talk about this in my class, is that do you disclose or do you not disclose?
Um,
If you are neuropassing, you know, like some of us are neuropassing. Does that mean that we should, or should we disclose immediately? Is it going to harm us in the job process if I'm applying and I say I'm autistic? These are conversations that we need to have, right?
um, is the show called Everything's Gonna Be Okay?
Yes.
there you go. Thank you, Isaac. You know, and you brought up a really good point. Disclosing. Do you share that information while you're on that job interview? Do you share the accommodations that you need? Do you do it after you're hired? Are people going to stereotype you as soon as you say you're on the spectrum? Because there's tons of ignorance out there. What's your take on that?
Through all of my students and conversations I've had on this, everyone kind of came to the same conclusion as me, that it's on an individual basis with who you're dealing with, right? sometimes you might be called to disclose it immediately. Sometimes it might not feel necessary immediately. I think it just depends. It depends on your comfortability and what you're feeling in the moment. I mean, sadly, there are times when I apply for jobs. Sometimes I say that I am, and sometimes I don't. Because sometimes I do feel like this is going to hinder my ability to get this job if I disclose this based on, the stigma and the stereotypes around it. And other times I'm like, this company seems more progressive, and we're in this like woke era where it's kind of cool to be neurodivergent. And sometimes they need to meet the quota, right? You need a disability quota, you need a neurodivergent quota. So,
and that's very true in Hollywood, correct? Right?
Yeah.
Certain films require certain individuals and certain percent of your crew, etc. So it is interesting, and we are finding a lot of companies like the Google and those type of Intuit and so forth are looking for individuals who think differently, and someone who is neurodivergent who's going to bring something else to the table versus the same. So originality and being authentic again is very important. Are there any other questions out of our crew? Speak now, forever hold your peace. On that note, Zhara, it is absolutely wonderful speaking with you. I think all that you are doing and advocating and changing the stereotypes and completely kicking those through the door, the work is very important. Giving hope, giving that self-awareness to young girls who are trying to figure out what's going on in the world and who they are. God bless you for the work you're doing. Continued success. I cannot wait to watch those projects on PBS and then see what you got cooking for the future. But I just want to wish you continued success, and thank you for your time and speaking with us here on Breaking the Biz.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. And I am sorry about the James Bond comment because I don't want to be a dream crusher. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Oh, that's
you can be Juan Bond.
I'm gonna
what I mean?
So as an autistic woman, I know we're done here, but like we ruminate, and I will be ruminating about my response for the next month.
What are they saying about me?
Don't worry, that's fine.
As we conclude another enriching episode, we hope you found inspiration in the stories shared today. Let's take a moment to honor Yes I Can's role in bringing Breaking the Biz to life. Yes I Can's commitment to empowering young people with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship shines brightly, paving paths of opportunity and dialogue. This podcast celebrates the organization's dedication to nurturing talent and facilitating impactful discussions. Breaking the Biz is more than a podcast. It's a part of Yes I Can's broader mission to amplify voices, dismantle barriers, and craft a world that's more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Each episode is a chapter in our shared narrative of progress, education, and empowerment, driven by the spirit of Yes I Can. Thank you for spending your time with us on Breaking the Biz. Continue to challenge the status quo and share stories that resonate. Until our paths cross again, let's keep transforming aspirations into achievements and infuse every endeavor with optimism. Here's to advancing the landscape of the entertainment industry, one episode at a time. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.